The gameplay you're watching right now is really bad because I haven't played Overwatch in a long time but wanted to hop back in to unlock that one Sombra skin. And it's kind of weird for me to think about how long it's been since I played Overwatch regularly. I got it at launch, and it became a fixture of my life for almost 3 years. It's the first online game I've ever played with a group of friends, and the way we'd constantly geek out over the game and its characters cemented Overwatch as this really cool thing in my life that's always there for me to enjoy. Then this happened. Fire Emblem Three Houses has an embarrassingly large amount of story content, and almost all of it is character-driven. This cast is huge, and I feel like I know everything there is to know about each of them and all the important events of their lives. All on top of a combat system that makes every action you take feel incredibly important. Then I came back to Overwatch, and I was overwhelmed with how dull the game felt. Most of the gameplay felt like people just firing off superpowers in very general directions at random times, and the amount of actual characterization is ridiculously low. See, when I was swept up in the fandom I shared with my group of friends, I ate up every little inference the game provided me. A voice line here, a spray there, all breadcrumbs suggesting that these are characters with depth who live in a fleshed out world, when really they weren't. The closest we ever got to anything that actually informs who these characters are came through other media, usually comics and animated shorts, but even then, that information can be at odds with what's in the game. I played D.Va for 2 years, and had no idea what her personality was even like until they released that short starring her. And it totally contradicted what I thought I knew about the character based on the actual in-game content. I think it's great that Tracer has a girlfriend and Symmetra's on the autism spectrum, but both of those things feel like they were just tacked on to these characters after the fact. Like there was no plan before the game was released, and actual character traits are being made up and bolted onto these heroes as we go. So the gameplay wasn't doing it for me anymore, the characters can barely even be called characters, and my group of friends eventually stopped playing together. My interest in Overwatch was at an all-time low. Then this happened.
Blizzard Entertainment is facing a boycott of its own. Yeah, this isn't over. After the American video game company banned a player for voicing support for protesters in Hong Kong.
They banned Hearthstone pro player Blitzchung for saying, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our age," which is a phrase used amidst Hong Kong protests.
Activision Blizzard, which is 5% owned by one of the largest Chinese companies on the planet called Tencent, they basically suspended Blitzchung for a year and took away $10,000 in his prize money.
Blitzchung basically very briefly expressed support for Hong Kong and their human rights, which Hong Kong fears may be violated as China's influence, their authoritarian influence, seeps in.
Many gamers are now dumping their subscriptions to games like World of Warcraft in response to what they see as Blizzard kowtowing to Chinese censorship.
Now, we also had some condemnation from U.S. politicians stepping into this, as they did with the NBA controversy. The Blizzard shows it is willing to humiliate itself to please the Chinese Communist Party. No American company should censor calls for freedom to make a quick buck.
So I really don't like Blizzard as a company right now. They had a great opportunity to at least partially redeem themselves with a public apology at this year's BlizzCon. Instead, what they did was have the company's president give a 5-minute lecture about how awesome Blizzard really is, and that if they're guilty of anything, it's not quite living up to their own high standards. They didn't address the issue at all. They also, very importantly, didn't fix the issue. Players and casters are still banned for no good reason, and the president of Blizzard could get rid of those bans anytime he wants to, but didn't. The situation still sucks, Blizzard still sucks, and they think we're too stupid to continue to care about any of this as long as they dangle shiny new games in front of us. Then this happened. Overwatch 2 may end up being the make-good for all the shortcomings of Overwatch 1. It's going to have a PvE story mode, skill trees for each character, and progress the Overwatch timeline forward beyond the opening cutscene of Overwatch 1 for the first time ever. And all the cosmetics you've unlocked will come forward into the sequel. And the first game will continue to be updated with all the same new heroes and maps as the sequel, letting both games unite in one big pool of PvP. It sounds like the future of Overwatch is pretty bright. Nothing was said about loot boxes, but I can't imagine they're going anywhere. Blizzard makes too much money from them to ever phase them out, even though this is the perfect opportunity. But still, it seems like they're making a lot of smart decisions and saying all the right things, and Overwatch 2 could legitimately be everything I always wanted Overwatch 1 to be. Although, I'm really not sure, because now I think what I really wanted Overwatch to be is Fire Emblem. I want the gameplay to feel deliberate, like I'm not just waving a gun around and hoping to hit something. I want the characters to be capital C characters who get fully fleshed out and defined. I want a game that they never made, and maybe never will. As I sat there recording this footage, I realized that after I finished, I'd probably never play Overwatch again. And that felt kinda surreal. It felt like saying goodbye to an old friend. It's why, just before exiting the game, I put Symmetra back into her default costume. She was my favorite character in this game, the first one I ever mained, and it felt right to end it with her in her classic look. So will I play Overwatch 2? I honestly don't know. A lot of things about this game are still up in the air, but watching that new animated short reminded me that I still have strong feelings about these paper-thin characters. And how does that stack up against the fact that Blizzard might never actually make good on this whole mess with China? That question is more complicated than it probably should be, but the fact remains, a new console generation is coming, a new Overwatch, a new chance to jump in with my friends like old times, digging into these characters and their world like old times, forgetting about the rest of the world like old times. Maybe the best case scenario will happen. Maybe Overwatch 2 will be exactly the game I want it to be. Maybe Blizzard will fix this mess so I can feel good about supporting their product. Or maybe none of that'll happen, and my morals will crumble under the weight of the feelings I get when I watch animated shorts like this one. I guess we'll see.